Hello, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the Journal Post. We hold discussions and debates. So myself Suchaita Roy from the Department of Media and Technology, and today we will be talking about a very well-versed term and law, which is defamation. So we are having Professor Rajat Banerjee with us for today's discussion, who is an MPhil from JNU and LLM from WBNUOJS. He is currently an assistant professor in our Adams University. So we will now jump on to the questions.
My name is Rajat Banerjee and I have been working here as an assistant professor of law since the last 3 years, in fact more than 3 years. And my stint at Adams has been rather wonderful. So many learning experiences. I take classes both in LLB and LLM. Going back, if you're interested to know my academic credentials, I hold a master's and an MPhil from JNU New Delhi in political science with specialization in international relations, and then subsequently I came to law and I did my LLB and LLM and then my PhD. I'm just on the verge of submission of my PhD thesis, and apart from that I have about 15 years of work experience, which includes about 3 years of experience more than 3 years of experience in Adams. I believe this is something that would wind up my personal take or my personal profiling. So if you have any questions, you may proceed.
Okay, sir. So, sir, according to you, what is defamation?
So generally, defamation is something which we teach both in taught as a civil wrong and in the law of crimes. So defamation refers to an act, or which may also include an omission, which harms somebody's reputation. So, and there is of course a legal injury which is caused to the person. It may come through a slander or a libel, as it is said that slander is to ears and libel is to eyes. However, defamation in a larger way, I would not go into the legality since I believe you are not from the Department of Law. So I would say that defamation is it is both a civil offense and a criminal offense. So it is a type of an act which imputes or which affects somebody's reputation or harms somebody's reputation.
So, what kind of evidence is required for a defamation lawsuit?
In a lawsuit, generally, if it is a civil lawsuit, as I indicated, that defamation is both a civil wrong and is addressable in the law of torts. It is also a criminal offence defined under Section 499 of the Indian Penal Code 1860, Act 45 of 1860, and is the punishment for defamation is stipulated under Section 500 of the Indian Penal Code, which carries a punishment of 2 years, if I'm not very mistaken, 2 years of imprisonment, and with fine, or with both, I believe so. I do not recollect the exact punishment, but this is to the best I can reminisce. And the essentials that are required to be proved in a lawsuit concerning defamation are the general essentials. I would not go into too much of legality because you are asking me extempore questions and I am answering extempore. So it has to be the legal injury or the harm or the imputation to reputation, or rather it has if not the causation link, but at least actual harm has to be proved in a civil defamation case. One, in a criminal defamation case, intention has to be proved. Another thing that is an essential part of defamation is that the statement, whether the statement comes as a slander or as a libel, it must be incorrect. The statement must be a false statement, and of course, it is so. The general two requirements is that it must cause harm to the reputation, and it must be in terms of criminal while sort of referring to criminal law, it must have intention. The second point that I had said is that the expression, whether in the form of a libel or a slander, just joking actually, must be false. The statement must be false. Apart from that, there are some other legal requirements that are required in a lawsuit, especially if it is a case of slander. So slander is something, and yes, of course, I must put it on record that if it is a case of libel, the statement, whether it is in the verbal form or in any other form, it must be published. So the publication of the statement is another essential legal requirement in the case of libel, whereas in the case of slander is not actionable per se, because generally, since slander refers to words or expressions which are used verbally or orally rather, and there is no published statement, so slander may not be actionable per se. However, there are countries where slander is actionable. However, libel is actionable per se, whether we refer it to the law of torts, or whether you construe it through using the law of torts or using the law of crimes, whereas slander is not always actionable. In some jurisdictions, they bring action against slander as well. Do you have another further questions?
Yes, sir. So, sir, do you think in India defamation law is used for the political propaganda?
Defamation is a kind of law which is actually, I must say, it is in the vanishing point of jurisprudence. And there must be something done to the defamation laws, because one need not be famous, of course, to be defamed. However, the law is used and continues to be used for political purposes, and there are case laws being filed in different law courts across, in the Indian perspective, across courts in India, in order to achieve certain political ends. One thing which provides an inflection point in this growing debate on defamation laws is that defamation, has to be read in light with the freedom of speech and expression contemplated under Article 19(1)(a) of the Indian Constitution. So, in Shreya Singhal versus Union of India's case, a case which was adjudicated by the Supreme Court maybe in the year 2015, if I'm not very mistaken. This point was noted actually, so the moot point here is whether defamation actually frustrates the freedom of speech and expression remains to be seen, and of course the political parties and an extension of the freedom of speech and expression is a hate speech. So what would tantamount to a hate speech and what would not is a critical question, which serves, of course, intellectual as well as political purposes, and therefore political parties often have used defamation as their tool to extend certain forms of propaganda or to extend their mandates. It is of course a major media of false propaganda.
Okay. So, sir, how can a celebrity sue any press or media for defamation?
Now, this is again a very circuitous question I must answer. It actually, so as I had indicated, that it is defamation law is now in the vanishing point of jurisprudence and must be addressed by the courts of law, sternly, whether it is a civil case or a criminal case. In a criminal case, it is very difficult to actually prove defamation because intention has to be proved. Now, whether it is a civil case, irrespective of it being a civil case or a criminal case, the major problem is, as per your question, is that celebs or celebrities, there are multiple cases across the world wherein celebs have sued another celeb or celebrity, not to use acronyms. So they have been using this tool for their advantage. However, I do not think that not all cases are correct, and I also do not think that the amount of compensation that is asked in civil defamation cases, I believe before pleading, while pleading before a court of law, there is no barrier whatsoever in asking for any form of compensation. So a celebrity may sue another celebrity or any other person for any imputation or any harm done, but eventually the law itself is highly fallacious, especially when read with the right to life and liberty under Article 21 and read with the right to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. So I would not be able to say whether Supreme Court needs to revamp the law, but I believe that there is a time to have a relook on the law, because this has been, as I had indicated earlier, this has been misused by the media. This has been misused by the political parties. The celebrities have also been misusing this. So I believe that a person is never so famous that he or she can file a 1 crore defamation suit, because we are all normal individuals in the proper sense of the term. And defamation is a law which is an unequal law. I call it an unequal law and must be addressed through the courts. However, I do not have an immediate answer to your question.
Okay, sir. So, what is defamation at workplace?
Defamation at workplace is a now this is a topic that changes the course of this entire deliberations that we are into. Now, defamation in workplace. So, for example, if the head or the employer is misbehaving with an employee, whether that tantamounts to defamation is a big question. Whether if somebody is right to freedom of speech and expression is violated within the confines of a workplace, whether that tantamounts to defamation per se is again another question. The point that is important to mention here is that when somebody is there in a workplace, does it empower the employer to go the way he or she likes? However, having said everything, defamation in workplace is increasing, no doubt, although it doesn't suit in the primordial definition of defamation encapsulated under sections 49, 499 and 500 of the Indian Penal Code or under the civil law. But people are being defamed. For example, if a dean, for example, in an academic institution, or if a vice chancellor in an academic institution, or for example, if a mere assistant professor is somehow removed from an academic institution of eminence, so automatically he or she may feel defamed. However, he or she may not have that immediate remedy of filing a case of defamation, because the question is not about whether he or she, whosoever is booted out, is famous or not. The question is that whether it is difficult to prove within the confines of a workplace whether the statement is correct or incorrect.
Okay, sir. So, sir, does defamation include penalty and imprisonment?
Yes, it does. It does under as I had indicated in some time back, it does under the civil law, rather to be precise, under the law of tort. Defamation is of course remediable through compensation or maybe an injunction by the court not to do. The court may injunct a person who has allegedly defamed someone not to defame, the court may ask for, or the court may say that compensation will be granted for those persons, for the person who has been defamed. In criminal law, as I had indicated, there is a punishment which is a 2-year imprisonment punishment and with fine and with both, or there is an and or dilemma which I am facing. So since the interview is extempore, I do not recollect, but maybe that a fine is included within, apart from the imprisonment of 2 years. So of course defamation is an existing law and is addressable both in the law of tort and in the law of crimes.
Okay, sir. So the last question would be, what kind of criminal category does defamation fall under?
Per se, as I again indicate, in the primordial sense of the term, defamation, can you reiterate the question once?
What kind of criminal category does defamation fall under?
Now, generally, what kind of criminal category, if I may understand your question correctly, so I do not know whether you are asking for a classification of crimes or...
It's a sort of classification.
So you would like to say that whether they are heinous crimes, because the IPC fails to demarcate, and it is only the Juvenile Justice Act that classifies crime as serious crimes and heinous crimes and less serious offences or something of that sort. The point is, of course, it is not a serious offence. The question is whether it must be there in the Indian Penal Code or not. Whether criminal liability may be fastened on persons, for criminally defaming someone is a big question. I do not believe that section 499 or section 500 are of any value right now. However, as I had indicated, so it is of course of a less serious nature. It is a less serious offence, and it is to the best of my knowledge, it is not a cognizable offence. It is a non-cognizable offence. Most of the offences which carry a punishment of less than 3 years are non-cognizable offences. However, given the less serious nature of defamation, there may be fissiporous tendencies, where a person's reputation or an institution's reputation through a person may be harmed. So doing away with the crime, I mean to say, if you eviscerate the crime from the Indian Penal Code statute book, that may also create some form of furore, because then genuine cases may not be redressed.
Okay, sir. So that's it for today, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of you and thinking me burly enough legally to answer critical questions such as the ones that you have asked on defamation without any prior knowledge or information. And thank you so much.